Great. Welcome everybody again to our June virtual community meeting for the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan. If you are new to these meetings, we have met monthly for quite a while now. Recordings of our past Zoom meetings and other project materials can be found at boston.gov/Blue Hill Avenue. And we'll have all of these links in the chat and at the end of the presentation for you to access. First, we like to begin our meetings with project goals. These goals have guided us through this entire process and will continue to guide us. Goal 1 is to improve pedestrian safety along Blue Hill Avenue. Goal 2 is to expand transportation options and reliability. And goal 3 is to connect infrastructure investments to the work of other city departments and state agencies, including the ones that are listed here. We also have some meeting goals that we like to ground our meetings every month. Goal 1 is to orient folks as to where this project comes from, who is involved and who will be involved in the future, and why this process is different from other planning processes that the city has run. Goal 2 is to provide updates on alternative design scenarios. So we'll go into a lot more detail about what that means. And goal 3 is to provide an overview of upcoming engagement and how you can get involved in the process. So with that, I will pass to Chevelle.
Thank you, Maya. And before we begin our time together, it's really good to start off the time with some ground rules. So we have our 4 usual ones. The first one is maintaining respect for others in the space. That's including consultants, yourselves, and also the city agencies that are in the room here today. Using I statements, and if you're representing a neighborhood association or group, please share that when speaking. The third one is stepping up and stepping back. We all know that one. So if you're a person who talks a lot, how about you talk, you say what you need to say, and then you allow some other folks who would like to speak to share their experiences as well. And then if you're a person that is normally not too good with speaking in community meetings, how about you take a stab at doing that or typing in the chat as well? And the last one is there will be a good amount of time for reaction and discussion at the end. So as always, put your questions in the chat and I'm sure that the team will be able to get to your questions at that time.
So tonight's agenda is going to include our usual meeting the team, learning about the project, and reviewing our public commitments. We are going to get updates on alternative design scenarios. So going through the scenarios, how we landed on them, what the city's preference is and why, and how we got to that preference. And we will end the meeting with how to get involved, and we will also have time for questions, comments at the end.
So hi, everybody. My name is Kirsty. I'm the project manager for this project and playing the role of Jeff tonight as he was unable to make it, and he usually launches our polls. So as those of you who have been here before know, we like to start off by getting an idea of just who's in the room with us. So we have an intro poll that I'm launching now that asks what your main way of traveling on Blue Hill Avenue is. If you want, there's an open box option where you can indicate why that's your primary way to get around, like what helps to influence how you choose to travel on Blue Hill Avenue. And then a third question, which is what is your home zip code? So this helps us understand kind of like who all is here with us tonight. I see we've got a few responses, but we're going to leave it open for a moment while everybody gets things filled out. Excellent. And I will, once the poll is done, I'll end the poll and you all will be able to see the results so you know who all is here too. Thanks, Kenya. Yeah, it really helps us to understand who's here. Importantly, so we can also understand who's not here. You know, who are we not reaching? Who do we need to do more outreach to? So we really appreciate your participation. Gonna give it a couple more seconds. If you can't work the poll, please feel free to post in the chat instead. Absolutely can take feedback that way. Just a couple more seconds. Okay. So, oh, we got a couple of late arrivals coming in. Okay. We'll end it there. So thank you so much, everybody. If you didn't get to answer the poll, please feel free to put it in the chat. It looks like tonight, over half of you all are coming to us, mostly drive on Blue Hill Avenue. Second most common is bus or train at 23%. After that is biking at 8%. And then we've got, after bus train is walking at 12%. Biking after that, and then other. If you want to clarify what other is, we'd love to see that in the chat too. So thank you so much, everybody. And with that, we can actually move to the next slide. So yes, I see a comment that you see scooters a lot. I have also seen scooters a lot in my time on Blue Hill Avenue, so it's very possible. So you'll hear from me for a little bit, and then I'll pass it off to some other members of our team. But as I said, hi, my name is Kirsty Hostetter. I'm the project manager for the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan, which never stops being a mouthful. So I'm joined today by two of my colleagues from the Boston Transportation Department, one of whom you've heard from, Maya Mutgal, and then also Charlotte Fleetwood, who is helping to manage our Mattapan Square process, which is sort of originated as a Vision Zero process, but is now being brought into this broader project and body of work. We also have the benefit of working with many amazing colleagues across City Hall at other departments, especially Kenya Beeman, who's here today with us from the BPDA, a community liaison, but also all of the other departments you see listed here. And then finally, we are joined rounding out our public sector team by partners from the state. So we have folks from the MBTA as well as Massachusetts Department of Transportation, or Mass DOT, that work with us on this project as well. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it off to Anne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anne. I am an urban planner with Grayscale Collaborative, which, as you can see from the slide, is one of the engagement consultants working with the city and the project team. So the full team of engagement consultants also includes Powerful Pathways, Tool Design Group, Consult Leela, and Real Talk for Change. We also have a group of community partners that we meet with on a weekly basis. Those meetings are really to discuss strategy as well as engagement implementation and really thinking through the day-to-day operations. We also have held stakeholder workshops. These happen a bit less frequently with the organizations that you can see listed here. And again, as Kirsty noted, the three public agencies that we work with the most closely are the Boston Transportation Department, the Boston Planning and Development Agency, and the MBTA. Next slide, please. So before we give an overview of the engagement to date, we do like to ground this process in the public commitments that this project team really uses to guide this process. So this may be familiar for those of you who have joined meetings in the past, but we do always want to share in case there are new folks in the room. So the first commitment is that the city and engagement team are committed to making informed, data-driven decisions which respond to questions raised by the public. The second commitment is that the city and engagement team are committed to improving pedestrian safety along Blue Hill Ave. And the third commitment is that the city and engagement team believe that the public funding for this project should be allocated based on public priorities. Next slide. Before we talk about Blue Hill Ave specifically, I do want to acknowledge that there are many, many planning projects and initiatives happening around and along the Blue Hill Ave corridor. So these include projects that are led by some of the public sector folks in this room, as well as other public agencies within the city of Boston. If you would like to take a full list, I'm not going to read them out now, but we do always post a copy of these slides online. I do also want to talk more specifically about how this team is working. So on the left, you can see a map that shows the project geography that this team is mostly focused on. Since June of 2019, we have held a really wide range of different engagement events, both small and targeted to very broad ranging and open to the public. Most importantly, though, I do want to stress that this team from the beginning has been thinking about how we can work along Blue Hill Ave in a different way than perhaps traditional planning and transit projects have worked. So what that means is we're looking at a holistic approach to Blue Hill Ave in terms of what people want to see, what their concerns are, and what their hopes are for the future. What that means in a practical manner is that we are not looking at just transportation, but also thinking about the public realm, housing and development, business and employment. Next slide. So this slide has a lot of text, but in a nutshell, it's really just showing some high-level overview of key engagement events that we have held since 2019. So that includes a community survey that has gone out to the general public. It includes a Blue Hill Ave Town Hall hosted by Councilor Mejia. It also includes a series of community walks that were accompanied by the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, as well as a series of focused workshops with grade schoolers who live and travel along Blue Hill Ave, also bus operators at the MBTA, and a series of open drop-in events that happened from January to May of this year at Mattapan Station and the Grove Hall and Mattapan Public Library branches. We are currently still in the midst of engagement. You'll hear a little bit more at the end of this meeting about how to get involved, but we are very committed to making the best use of the summer and the nice weather that we have, and really making as many opportunities as possible for folks to learn about what's going on and to share feedback. Next slide. So just to give a detailed look at what engagement we've done since we met last month in May. This includes some bus rider surveys that were conducted by one of our partners. This happened in May and June. It also included a series of small group conversations called Real Talk Conversations with high schoolers who live or travel along Blue Hill Ave, a parking study survey that happened on a few dates around the Harvard Neighborhood Health Center, a meeting that took place with the public sector team and the mayor and other electeds around the city. It also included a community open house last week. You'll hear a lot more about that today. And specifically, you're going to see exactly what we showed, what the project team showed to the mayor and different electeds on alternative design scenarios for Blue Hill Ave. Next slide. So I'm going to pass it back to Kirsty to go through those alternative scenarios.
Yes, so hi everyone. We'll be walking through sort of the two different alternative design scenarios that we will be engaging folks on over the coming months. So next slide. So what are those scenarios? I know that's the big question. So the first scenario is a multimodal corridor. We'll get into more specifics about exactly what that means. We'll go through kind of the details of each. And then the second is an enhanced existing conditions scenario. And in terms of how we got to this point where that's what we're presenting to you all today, we are working to balance what we've heard from a wide range of community members, elected officials, bus operators, and riders especially with regards to sort of the current challenges that they have when traveling on Blue Hill Ave and what they hope for the future. Again, a lot of that feedback has been conflicting, so we're trying our best to sort of balance that conflicting feedback and talk through some options with folks. And then it's also based on operational and cost considerations, like what money that we have available to spend on the projects, what do bus operations look like, what are the limitations there, all of that. So next slide. We'll start with the multimodal corridor. So this is a graphic that's meant to not represent any specific area on Blue Hill Avenue, but just provide a good illustration of kind of what are we even talking about when we say multimodal corridor, because it can be a little bit of transportation planning speak. So when we say multimodal, we're really thinking about that goal number 2 that we have as part of this project, expanding transportation options as well as their safety and reliability for folks. And so here we are looking at things like enhanced bus shelters, center running bus lanes. In terms of, for the bus, we're looking at protected bike lanes for folks who are on bikes. We're looking at pedestrian safety improvements and full sidewalk reconstruction. For folks who walk, we're looking at traffic signal retiming and other safety improvements for folks who drive. And then in addition to that, with a project of this size, we're able to do things like look at public art. So are there ways that we can embed public art onto new bus shelters, into the sidewalks, into sort of our public spaces? There would be the opportunity for enhanced lighting that makes it brighter and better visibility for people in cars and on foot. We would also be looking at updating parking regulations to better match the businesses and the homes that abut them. We've got a lot of different types of businesses, residences, community centers along Blue Hill Avenue. We want to make sure that our parking regulations match those needs. We'd also look at things like tree canopy expansion. So there would be more space and we'd have a lot of new and exciting opportunities for what we could do with our trees, significant green infrastructure improvements, and then of course a full roadway reconstruction. So fixing all of those potholes that we've heard quite a lot about. So next slide. So what does that look like on Blue Hill Avenue? So we have a couple of visuals for our visually minded folks so that you can kind of understand from a perspective of someone who's on Blue Hill Avenue, what would this look like? So this is a very draft rendering of the public realm in the vicinity of Blue Hill Avenue and Walk Hill Street. So this is what that specific corner would sort of look like based on the draft design that we have for discussion. Again, this is just a draft. It's just meant to kind of help folks. We've heard in our discussions to date that people were having a hard time visualizing what this big of a change might look like. And so this is meant to help facilitate those discussions so people can point out specific things and have a deeper dialogue. If we go to the next slide, this is a viewpoint looking northbound on Blue Hill Avenue from Morton Street at Harvard Street / Talbot Ave. And so this is what that multimodal corridor design approach could look like here. You can note sort of like the green infrastructure and such that we're talking about, some of those low-lying grasses that can help with flooding and stormwater retention. And then if you go to the next one, we have the third rendering, which is of the vicinity of Blue Hill Avenue and Seaver Street. We've heard from a couple of folks that right-hand turn lane, if you're going eastbound on Seaver Street onto Blue Hill, people sort of really accelerate in order to make that right-hand turn. And so here is just a draft option of what it could look like if we instead try to make that kind of an extension of Franklin Park and make that a great space for pedestrians, add some trees, benches, lighting, and that sort of thing. So again, these are tools to help with discussion as we continue to do engagement around this option. And if we move to the next slide, I do want to show you all this. So this is called a role plan. And what that means is it's basically like bird's eye view, Google Maps, like satellite view of the corridor. What does it look like and what could it look like? And so what we are showing here, the reason I want to talk about this today is we won't have time to go through the whole role plan. We'll talk about like how we can absolutely set up a time to meet with the project team so we can go through the specifics if you want to look right in front of your business or your house or you're interested in a particular stretch. But I wanted to take this time to kind of tell you all what is on this page. What does it mean? Because these are already posted on the project website. So you can go look it up for yourself. And then that way we can have a discussion after you've kind of had a chance to look. So there's a lot of information here. The top part of your screen is showing the existing condition on Blue Hill Avenue. So you are seeing parking spaces marked with sort of like blue rectangles. You are seeing travel lanes kind of as you would imagine them. You're seeing green to mark like where we have bike lanes today. There are some bike lanes today on Blue Hill. Very little of it is what we would call a protected bike lane, but they are there. They're mostly just painted on the street, but we highlight those in green so they're easier to see. And then we've got yellow bus stops so that you can see that those yellow rectangles are where the bus stops are. And then those yellow circles are telling you exactly how many people get on and off a bus there every day. And so that's sort of, and then the final part of up top is you'll see that kind of little, it looks like a car in a little bubble, and then there are some arrows. So that's just telling you how many lanes there are for traffic. And so this goes really block by block so that we have a comparison point. So when we talk about what does the multimodal corridor design approach look like, then you have the bottom. So on the bottom, we have where you can see we are specifying the number of lanes for cars, but also you'll see the one with a bus for a bus lane. You will see individual parking spaces kind of outlined with a white triangle wherever those are proposed. The yellow rectangles are the bus boarding platforms. So those are kind of like where the bus shelters would be and where people would get on from the bus. The red indicates the red painted bus lane, and then the green in the middle is sort of like the green median with the trees. And the final element of there are the bike lanes on the side. So you can see those are kind of marked with skip green and they have a little bike icon in there. So that's just an overview of what this looks like. We have this for the whole corridor. It's posted online so that folks can get into a lot more detail. So next slide. So that was approach number one. Based on the feedback, we also have a secondary approach and approach number two that we'll be talking with folks about. And so what we're calling this is sort of enhanced existing or enhanced existing conditions. So we heard from some folks that they didn't want to see a lot of changes to Blue Hill Avenue. They just wanted to see some like longstanding concerns addressed. And so that is what this option looks to do. So we would fill in all of the missing tree pits with new trees and with our new, according to our new tree planting guidelines that help to ensure our trees are healthier and around for a longer time using some new techniques that we have. We would also actually make sure that all of the bus stops meet the guidelines set by the MBTA. So back in, I think 2018, MBTA set new guidelines for how many feet a bus stop needs to be, depending on where it is on the street. If it's right before an intersection, if it's right after, or if it's kind of in the middle of a block. And that is so that the bus has enough room to pull into the bus stop and get right along the curb so that folks with disabilities, people in a stroller, with a stroller, people with a grocery cart are able to actually like get off onto the sidewalk. So we would look to elongate bus stops where needed. Next slide. We would also try to create safer mid-block crosswalks. So those are those crosswalks that aren't really at a light or at an intersection. A good example is the one by Morning Star Baptist Church. So we would look at areas to make those safer by adding the rapid flash beacons. So those like yellow flashing lights where you can push a button to indicate you want to cross and it'll flash to drivers like, hey, someone is trying to cross here. And then another tool we have to do that are called curb extensions, which you can see on the right. That is where we kind of bump out the sidewalk to make the crossing shorter. And so that as you're a person walking to the crosswalk, when you get to the edge of the the sidewalk, people can actually see you from the car. It gives you, like, it puts you out there a little bit more so you can make eye contact before you cross. Next slide. Where we would also upgrade all of the curb ramps. So we would make sure that all of those are accessible with sort of like the yellow tactile pad. They face in the right direction. They meet all of our like slope requirements. There's a bunch of technicalities around this. So we would make sure that we meet all of those needs to make them fully accessible. And we would do the same with crossing. So you can see up above, you might say like, hey, what's wrong with that crossing? Well, if you are in a wheelchair, that opening in like the median and the little concrete area in the middle actually isn't big enough for you to be able to roll through there. So we would make sure that all of those crosswalks also meet our accessibility guidelines with our Disabilities Commission. Next slide. We would also repave the whole street. So again, getting rid of those potholes that we've been hearing a lot about. And then instead of doing a full sidewalk reconstruction, like fully redoing the sidewalk along the whole corridor, we would do sort of spot repairs and maintenance. So this shows an example of where you can see there's kind of like an asphalt, like blacktop patch on part of the sidewalk. So in areas where there are those sort of like patches that need to be fixed or other things, we would make the repairs to kind of bring that into a flat, good looking sidewalk. So the city does have a preference in all of this, and we do prefer a multimodal corridor approach. And there are reasons for that we wanted to outline for you all today. So the first is that we, from a transportation planning perspective, think that designing Blue Hill Avenue as a multimodal corridor will address the fundamental design of the road to make it safer. We've heard a lot of concerns about traffic safety on Blue Hill Avenue from people who travel by every different type of mode. And we believe that a full redesign is more likely to reduce reckless speeding while not relying on law enforcement officers to be present 24/7. Unfortunately, I was actually just talking with two B3 police officers who I saw during an engagement recently, and they reiterated once again that they're understaffed. So at present, we do not have the staff needed in order to put enough law enforcement officers on Blue Hill Avenue that it would be effective to really reduce reckless speeding at all times of day, at all times of night. And we don't expect that staffing issue to be solved anytime soon. I do want to mention though, on the parking enforcement side, where BTD actually, the transportation department is in charge, we are hoping to backfill some of our open positions in our parking enforcement. So we are looking to build out that group of personnel again, so that we can once again kind of really start keeping on top of parking enforcement, which is another thing we've heard a lot about. We also prefer a multimodal corridor approach because a full street redesign means we would have room to plant a healthier and more substantial tree canopy and to create comprehensive green infrastructure investments. So that is one of the benefits of sort of looking at a more transformational change. We could use the latest techniques in green infrastructure design that help to create happier and healthier trees that grow bigger and survive longer, but that don't break up the sidewalk. And then we also think that a multimodal corridor would give Boston residents multiple safe, reliable options for traveling on Blue Hill Avenue, regardless of income, ability, or age. Next slide, please. So we've gotten this question a lot, which is, as you saw today, the multimodal corridor approach, we are looking at a center running bus lane as opposed to a side running or another type of bus priority. And we wanted to talk a bit about why that is. So we expect that a center running bus lane could get riders from Grove Hall to Mattapan Square in 15 minutes, even during rush hour, which would save them about 30 minutes in each direction per day. That's a lot of time savings for folks who want to be spending more time with their families, want to be spending more time in their communities. So center running bus lanes are more separated from regular traffic than side running lanes. And what this means is that it actually reduces conflict not only for the bus, but also for drivers. And so it saves more time for bus riders. So when lanes are in the center and the stops are in the center, it's a lot less likely that people park in the bus lanes or in the bus stops, which means they're largely self-enforcing. You know, it's farther away from, it's not right in front of that pizza place that everybody wants to go to or right in front of the supermarket. So people are less likely to park in the bus stop. It also helps to reduce that conflict between cars and buses by moving buses away from those parking spots, the driveways, the loading zones, the right turns. And when people are turning left, we can often do that at a signalized intersection, so an intersection with traffic lights, which separate movements and are therefore a lot safer for both cars and buses. And then in terms of center running lanes, they do create a better bus rider experience based on the feedback that we've heard from bus riders we've engaged with. There's a lot more space for passenger platforms and amenities on center boarding platforms, and it frees up more space on the sidewalk for other uses as well, so that you're not competing with the large groups of people waiting for the bus. And also the platforms actually match the height of the bus. So it's kind of more like as if you were getting on the subway. You can really just step on instead of having to step up, which is a lot better for people with mobility challenges or who are carrying a lot of things or pushing carts. Next slide. So I'm sure a lot of you are asking, okay, here there are these two approaches, like how are we going to get to a decision, not necessarily on the final design, but just about like what approach we're going to continue refining, because I want to be clear that either of what you got shown today, that's not like etched in stone, it's final, this is what's happening on Blue Hill Avenue. We are not even to like selecting an approach yet. And then once we choose an approach, there's a lot of work that's going to happen, continued engagement to really refine that and make sure it reflects the community's needs. So we're still very early in the process for sort of a big streets project like this. But in terms of just deciding even which direction we're going to go in, we anticipate that the Mayor Wu's administration will make the final decision in consultation with other local elected officials that represent the area. To help them make that decision, we'll be providing a comprehensive overview of the feedback collected during the entire engagement process in order to help them make that decision. So we'll be working with our core team to look at examples that other cities, other states have used to compile feedback and to give an overview of like the folks that they've talked to, the activities they did. And we will be putting that into a big report that we will give to them to help them make their decision. We will also in the report talk a bit about some of our broader city goals that also apply to Blue Hill Avenue. So vibrancy, resiliency, equity, inclusivity, and you can read more about those goals in the various planning documents you see here. And again, we just want to highlight that there have been a lot of competing priorities in what we're hearing. So as an example, some people are really saying, you know, like we need less traffic congestion, we need fewer delays, and other folks have been getting in touch with us and saying like, I really wanted to be safer to cross the street at this location, or I want it to be easier to get through the crosswalk. And these goals can be in opposition to each other because to lessen delays, we have to build bigger and wider roads. And while those roads may have a lot of cars on them during rush hour, at other times of the day, they kind of are just a wide open road that encourage speeding, and speeding drivers are more likely to kill or severely injure a pedestrian if they hit them. So just highlighting that, you know, when we're making decisions about design, when we're talking with you all about the trade-offs embedded within different ways we can design our streets, we do have to prioritize certain needs and concerns over others just because we only have so much space. And we want to be really upfront and honest about that with you all. So once the city does make a decision on what like design approach to move forward with, and after the continuing engagement that we'll be doing for these next couple months, we will release a report outlining exactly what the decision is and how and why it was made for full transparency moving forward. So next slide. Okay, so final poll of the evening. What questions do you have about this project? I am going to open up the poll. It's just a fill in the blank. So like, what are your questions? And I would also encourage you all to look. We recently released a big project frequently asked questions document. It's highlighted on our website. You can get to it here by scanning the QR code or typing in bit.ly/BHA capital F, capital A, capital Q, S. It does have to be like with the capitalizations in order for it to work. But that is a compilation of a lot of the questions we've heard to date with responses that were compiled by folks at the city. And we will continue to update that document. So if you look at it, you'll notice that we have in there a last updated with a date. As we get more questions, we will continue to answer those. We will continue to make sure that we're being responsive to the questions people have. So you can either respond in the poll on your screen in the chat by using our question form. If we can actually go to the next slide, I am going to keep the poll open, but there is the opportunity. We also have a quick form if you want to add a question, if you think your question is missing from there. Again, we have a QR code, we have a link. That form is also linked within the frequently asked questions document itself. It's available on our website. So lots of ways to get in touch to let us know you have more questions and to make sure we're hearing those. I'm going to end poll. So if you haven't finished putting in there, you can put it in the chat. You can email it to us. You can call us and let us know, but maybe like save what you're typing just in case. Okay, I'm going to end it in 3, 2. Ooh, I see a lot of people. Okay. I don't want to cut anybody off and have them lose their response. So 3, 2, 1. Okay. So if we can go to the next slide. How to get involved. One more. So we do have a number of upcoming engagement opportunities for you to come talk to us in person in more depth about sort of these 2 design approaches. So we will be doing that at a Not Your Average public meeting hosted by Consult Leela in the Grove Hall area. We're still working on getting a firm date, time, and location for that. And then we are also working with the Carter Post to hold an open house down there on the Mattapan Square end of the corridor as well. And then we are currently, as a team, compiling a list of all the different types of meetings and events happening around the communities that are connected to Blue Hill Avenue, and we will be in person at those, showing up, meeting people where they are, and talking to them using these resources about the design approaches. So next slide. So how to stay connected, you can give us a call. So this number goes straight to the phone at my desk. I check it multiple times a week. So if you can call in, you can just leave feedback. We'll put that into our feedback tracker. If you want to call back or an email back, just make sure to leave some contact information. You can also find all of the most up-to-date project information on the website, and then you can email us. So bluehillav@boston.gov. That's checked by a number of folks from the project team. And we try to make sure that we're diligent too about responding to those, or you can just leave feedback and we'll put that into the feedback tracker. So lots of ways to get in touch. We want to make sure we're being responsive to people. Okay, so with that, I think we can move into the question and answer portion of the meeting tonight. I know I saw a lot of questions going by in the chat, so my apologies while I try to zoom back up and see what those were. And then if you would like to ask a question out loud, please just raise your hand and we'll make sure we hear from folks that way too. Thank you all for bearing with us. I know that was a lot of information. So I appreciate you all sticking around and listening. Okay. Okay, a question of if we are factoring in school bus drop-offs and pickups. Yes. So we are working with our Boston Public Schools. We have a blanket policy in the city that school buses, ambulances, police cars, other emergency vehicles can all use our bus lanes. So we will be working with sort of the head of operations over at Boston Public Schools to make sure that our school bus drivers are ready to go using bus lanes across the city, not just if there are bus lanes here on Blue Hill Avenue. Mr. Kozu, that was one of your first questions. I see your hand is raised, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay.
So there's a number of questions included within that.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
for school bus pickups and drop-offs, you're going to have a lot of parents, particularly with elementary school students, wanting to be by their child and not leave their child out in a center bus lane platform unattended. And there's little places for them to park along, for example, the Columbus Ave um, park way as well. The other thing is by eliminating the medium strip, that means the school buses are picking up or dropping off students, then people in all lanes have to stop. So it kind of defeats the purpose of your trying to speed up traffic. The other part is you also have to factor in the not just the regular bus stops, but also the bus stops for the special needs students where there's at door addresses pickup that would be along Blue Avenue as well. So that will slow down your projected 15-minute ride faster because people have to allow for stopping and for the school buses when they're picking up and dropping off students on all lanes as possible. So there's a number of different factors and concerns that it hasn't worked out well along Columbus Ave regarding school bus pickups and drop-offs as well.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Kozu. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming to these monthly meetings. We really appreciate you coming along with us in this process. So in terms of school buses, school operations with bus lanes, we actually see, so even today, people are technically supposed to stop in both directions if a bus is stopped. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. I'll actually just say really quickly on parking overall on the corridor. And then Charlotte, I might actually ask if you have anything to add about sort of school buses. You know, you've been really connected with Safe Routes to School. In terms of parking, we are doing a number of different things. So we have the one ongoing parking study. We are planning for many more to make sure we understand exactly where this kind of activity is happening. So where might it be that people are picking up and dropping off their kids like at a bus stop to get to school? You know, we'd also love through our Safe Routes to School program to look at what are the factors that impact, you know, people's choice to pick up and drop off instead of to let their kids walk to school outside of the scope of this project. But if you haven't seen our Safe Routes to School work, there's a lot of great people at the city working on that and also at the state level. But coming back to Blue Hill Avenue, we are very committed to doing the parking studies, publishing those publicly so people can see all the data and sort of see what parking looks like along Blue Hill Avenue. And so we are also looking to identify, we'll be doing a comprehensive overview of like, where are there parking resources along Blue Hill Avenue that we might not necessarily be using as efficiently as we could. So looking at different parking lots, especially those managed by the city, like at schools or municipal parking lots or community centers, and seeing what opportunities we have there for creative solutions, because Blue Hill Avenue is such a dynamic place. It needs a dynamic solution. So we're really committed to looking into all of those types of options as well. So Charlotte, I don't know if you have anything you want to add about school buses.
Just that we have a new full-time for the first time, BTD, Safe Routes to Schools planner, and we're working with them and with the Public Health Commission to try to launch a more robust Safe Routes to Schools program in our schools, actually starting with the Garrison Trotter neighborhood. So, you know, we want to do better and make sure that our students, however they get to school, can get there safely, whether it's walking, biking, taking the bus.
So I also see there was a question in the chat. What does multimodal mean? Excellent question. So it, as someone helpfully responded in the chat who's not even part of the project team, it sort of just means that a street that serves many different ways of traveling or getting around. So many modal ways of moving. And please always feel free, post in the chat when we're using, terms that don't make sense to you. Absolutely, that's something that you should feel free to ping us and say, hey, I need you to explain this a bit more. Okay. A great question. Why has it taken so long to get crosswalks and paved sidewalks in our communities? I have not been at the city for that long, so I can't speak to the exact decisions that were made by folks prior to this, but I think that this is just pointing out that it's an absolute injustice that Blue Hill Avenue has not seen sort of like a comprehensive redesign maintenance effort in over 50 years since the center running streetcars were actually taken out of the center of Blue Hill Ave in this area. That's actually where you get that really wide turn from Blue Hill Avenue onto Seavers. The trolley used to run there and then go to the middle of the street. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge this question in the chat, not because I have a good answer, but because I want to communicate that I understand that question is inseparable from the work we're doing today. So I really appreciate you elevating it and making sure that we on the project team are keeping that in mind in our work. So thank you, Hakeem. Where will this be? Great question. So we are very specifically talking about Blue Hill Avenue between Mattapan Square. So like where the bridge is, the line that borders Milton to the south, and then up to Warren Street and Grove Hall. That's sort of like the realm of what we're looking at for the project. It would stop at Warren Street. That's where most of the buses turn off, is onto Warren Street to head over to Nubian Station. And additionally, sort of the width of Blue Hill Avenue and the way that the side of the street is used is actually very different. North of Warren Street, it's a lot narrower. We wouldn't do bus lanes, or like there's already limited space in that area. So that's where the project ends. Let's see. I'm seeing some notes about problems with trees that were planted recently. So I can see that a number of my colleagues have already noted that. We will definitely raise that to our new head of green infrastructure, Kate England. She actually spoke at one of our meetings, I think 2 meetings ago, April. And we are still working on making sure that all of her best practices around planting to make sure that trees don't disrupt sidewalks, that they grow healthy, that they grow in good soil, that they're watered appropriately, are getting implemented. So we can definitely take a look though at what just happened and see if there's something that can be done. So there's a question in here, Charlotte, I think I'll invite you to answer. Also, I know you did in the chat, but just for anybody who might not have seen it go by, there's a question from Jared that asks, will the angled parking spaces adjacent to the retail in Mattapan Square be removed?
Yes, and we discussed that a little bit at our last meeting. So last Mattapan Square meeting, which was a week ago, the presentation is posted online on the website. We do have 2 options for Mattapan Square, really 3 options. One is keep it pretty much the way it is. The second option would be center running bus lanes with angled parking. And the third option would be center running bus lanes with parallel parking, which would provide additional space for street trees and to have protected bike lanes. So all 3 will fit. Both of those bus lane options would fit. The angled parking right now, it's a pretty severe angle. It's so if we were to keep the angled parking, we would want to bring it up to code. So change the angle a little bit, make the spaces a little bit wider. So there would still be an impact on parking no matter what we do, because we can't keep it the way it is, not up to code. Similar with, any of our crosswalks, we would bring any of the street features up to all the codes, but keeping the angle parking is an option.
Sorry, I'm working. I see there's new messages happening. I'm working my way down in the chat. So if I haven't gotten to you yet, I promise we're going to get there. Will the questions just collected be available to see on your website? Yes. So like I said, we're trying to keep that as a quote living document so that we're continuously updating it, always being responsive to feedback. So we will be sort of compiling those questions, seeing if we feel like they can be merged with ones that already exist, or if it's a new topic and we need to make sure we have a written answer that people can have. So we will absolutely be doing that. Not a question, but sort of a implied question of appreciating the outreach, but wanting to see the survey results posted. So we are working on compiling and then posting the various types of survey results that we've been doing. So to name a few, just so that folks have a good idea, our consulting partners at Consult Lila have been doing lots and lots of not necessarily just surveys, but engagements with youth. So they have been compiling that and actually have some preliminary results they've started sharing about, what do our young people specifically, how do they use Blue Hill Ave today? Sort of what are their major concerns? What are their hopes for the future? What does that look like? So we have that we're actually in the process of sharing, but we'll continue to refine that, and we're continuing to add information. We also have survey results from the Real Talk conversations that we've been hosting. So those are those sort of small guided conversations that ask people about what their questions are about the future of Blue Hill Avenue and sort of what from their life experience got them to those questions. So what's really great is that actually with that process, we will be able to have an interactive website where people can go through and kind of click through people's questions and their stories and their feedback about Blue Hill Avenue, and that will all be public facing. We are still working to make sure we get all of that set up. We also have to review all of that data, input it manually, the voice recordings and stuff, and type them out, transcribe them. So that's happening in the background, and we're excited to share that in the coming months. We have the bus rider survey. We are working on compiling that too, and also doing some analysis, looking at what people said, where they said it, what bus stop were they at, sort of all of that information. That will all be public as well. We're just doing the first pass at analysis because we've been out talking to bus riders for a while. We put some ads on the buses, but those were a little delayed in getting out due to some administrative hurdles. And so we wanted to wait for those responses to come in if we had time. And then we also have the business survey. So the business survey is definitely still ongoing. We're hiring some new people because we've had trouble getting enough people on the ground at all the times of days that are best for businesses to talk with the project team. And so we're hiring some folks who can be out there more 24/7 and not just behind a desk like me oftentimes, and get that information out there. So that is also coming soon. A lot of that survey data is more technical. It's asking where people get deliveries, how often they get deliveries, what size truck does it come in? But we can work on finding a way to share that as well. Okay. And if folks want to hear someone else speaking, please raise your hand. Let us know if you've got a question. I know that my voice can get tiring. Real quick, Kate and Andrew, before I get to you, I just did catch a question. So from Fatima Ali Salam of the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, which is, how will the city address the areas where there is currently double and triple parking? Will businesses be asked to address the issues? How is it addressed on other parts of Boston where there are a lot of Uber drivers doing pickups? It's a great question. And because as you all know, the emergence of Uber only happened within the past, I don't know, a decade at most. So we definitely are still, and it's grown and expanded and changed a lot. So we are trying to be more proactive in how we handle that on our streets. So a couple of things: we are hiring more parking enforcement officers who will actually make sure that our parking regulations are addressed, committed to, and that people aren't double and triple parking where they shouldn't be. We will be talking with businesses. We're looking to some of our partners, not just in Boston, but also in nearby cities like Somerville, like Cambridge, about what they've done to help support business owners. Like, are there areas where we can, guarantee business owners parking, but that's not right in front of their shop? Those like most valuable spaces for customers. So we will be in touch with business owners, with our Main Streets organizations, looking at what other examples we can look to and what options there are for solutions on that front. We also will be looking at, again, talking about those underutilized parking resources. Like, are there areas where, maybe there's a municipal lot that's not a municipal lot, but it's still owned or run by the city, and we could open it up on Saturdays for people who want to come shop in the square in Grove Hall. We're collecting the data we need to be able to start to have really good conversations about those more creative solutions. But definitely, double parking, triple parking, I've never seen anything like it on Blue Hill Avenue, but we do struggle with those same issues in other areas of the city. And so we have folks who are working like in BTD who I work with specifically on things around parking enforcement, around how we use the side of our curbside or that area, right along the sidewalk. And we'll be bringing all of those lessons learned and those new techniques and policies to this project. So with that, Kate, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hi there.
Hi, everybody. And thanks to everyone who's involved in this project and in running the meeting tonight. This is really a great way to learn a lot of information about the project and also about what my neighbors think. So I live off of Blue Hill Ave in the Dudley Triangle. And I have one question, which is a lot of folks in the community in this meeting are concerned about the traffic impacts of doing a multimodal redesign, which it's probably clear by now from my comments in the chat, I fully support. But I also think it's important to address those concerns about traffic flow. And so I'm wondering if the city has conducted or plans to conduct traffic studies that would give us some information about what the impact is likely to look like. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So it's a great question. We will be doing a sort of traffic or congestion study. We can't do one at this stage in the process. We need some more details on the designs. I'm looking at our engineer, Ned, to see if he's shaking his head yes or no, if what I'm saying is correct. Yeah, Ned, do you want to give sort of a brief response about when you would do a traffic study or kind of what detail you need in order to be able to do something like that?
Yes. What we would need to do is do traffic counts at key intersections up and down the corridor. Probably, pretty much all of the intersections with traffic signals, and as well as some of the major just stop sign intersections without traffic signals. Get all of the information on how the traffic signals are timed currently, and put those into a computer model that kind of estimates the congestion, and then we check that against what we actually see on the street, and then we can use that to basically test out these different options for roadway redesign, to see what the impact would be of changing the use of the lanes, adding in bus lanes, changing some of the turning movements, potentially changing how some of the signals are operated to make them more efficient.
Thank you so much, Ned, for that. And I think this ties into another question I saw in the chat too, which is, sort of, what's the goal of improving the bus and improving like the safety and reliability of biking and walking. And it gets to a question about congestion as well, which is that we only have so much space on our streets. And so when we're looking at sort of how our streets work today, how they function, over half of people on Blue Hill Avenue are on buses. So it's not really working very well for the majority of people who use the avenue. And then 2, we don't have more space. So that limits our options in terms of what we really can do to lessen congestion, to make it faster to drive without sort of putting at risk people crossing the street, sort of with that example that I gave earlier. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to make it easier for people to choose other options. We're trying to make it so that people don't feel like they have to get in their car to go somewhere. But I want to be clear that we always are going to recognize that there are people who need or who will want to drive, and that we want space on the road for them too. So part of this is about enabling people to make the choice that is best for them by giving them multiple safe, reliable options to choose from. And we are I've had discussions with actually even a couple of folks on this call about like, that's great. That's lovely as an idea. How do we get there? So we understand that there's sort of a transition that we have to be really mindful of. That's why we're doing things like really looking at, how can we still preserve parking? How can we, address that people aren't going to just change their behavior on a dime? And what other supportive programs can we put in place if we're saying that we're kind of running out of space on our roads for everybody to be in a car? So it's a great question about congestion. It's one of the reasons why we're really focused in the design about having separate turn lanes for folks so that people can like get in the queue to get where they need to go. But it's absolutely something that we'll continue talking about as a project team and with you all, members of the public. So with that, Andrew, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hi there.
Hello. So
Hi.
I have a question about the Blue Hill Ave, the street down there. I've noticed quite a few times when I take the bus out there, I go down that street, even at 10 or 11 in the morning, I find myself stuck in traffic very, very often. Has there been any consideration to extending this, either the silver line down there or considering building a light rail, heavy rail? I feel like this might be a very expensive thing to do today, but I think the benefit is going to be way better in the future. I think this is going to be very beneficial for people. And I think that's something maybe the MBTA could consider. So that's my question.
Thanks, Andrew, for your question. So it almost sounds like you've read the Roxbury Dorchester Mattapan study, which outlines sort of actually light rail on Blue Hill Avenue as an option. There are a couple of reasons that we're talking about the bus today instead of light rail. The first is money. As you mentioned, it costs a lot more money to build a light rail extension to put out the rails as opposed to improve our bus infrastructure. And with some of the new techniques we can get pretty close to rail travel times with really solid center bus lane, like really good bus infrastructure. The other thing about buses is that they're more flexible. So let's say something does happen, an emergency vehicle needs to pull into the center of the bus lane, something of that nature, that the bus can still go around. It's not on those tracks where it's unable to sort of, get around obstacles or to adapt to changes on the street, because our streets in Boston are really dynamic and sometimes we have one-off events that happen. Or a bus also can be rerouted in the case of something like the Haitian Festival, where they shut down the street. So that's another reason. But I do want to be clear that one of the nice things about a center running bus lane is it does preserve that space in the middle of the street. So that one day, if we did have money for it, or if it was determined that there was a need to kind of like upgrade to a rail facility, then you kind of have that dedicated space to do that. But specifically with this project, we're talking about bus infrastructure. Okay. I'm looking through just to see if we have other questions. Ooh, what are the volumes for cyclists? It is a great question. So we actually do bike counts all across the city. You can find those at Boston Bikes. You just Google Boston Bikes counts. We take them, I think it's every 3 months. We post it online on a map so everybody can see. I think Charlotte mentioned a good point here, which is that we have one counting location on Blue Hill. The numbers are not huge, but there is, people don't bike where they don't feel safe. And I have heard from almost every person who bikes on Blue Hill Avenue that I've talked to or would consider biking on Blue Hill Avenue that they don't feel safe, even the people who do choose to bike there. And so in a project like this, we don't just rely on counts to determine whether or not there should be bike infrastructure, because it's not actually reflective of the number of people who might use it if they felt safe doing so. I know personally, I don't feel safe biking on Blue Hill Avenue, except in a very few specific segments where I feel like I can kind of have enough space. But that is a great resource. So if you want to look it up, Boston Bikes, our bike counts. Okay, will the project include new street lighting or at least improved lighting where residents have asked for improvements? We are absolutely looking at new street lighting. So what is really exciting is that we have these sort of new types of light poles that we can use in the city that shine a light both like out over the street at a higher level, sort of thinking from the perspective of someone in a vehicle moving faster who needs to see farther, but then also a lower light on the other side. I'm sorry if I look ridiculous right now, but it's sort of more lower level, closer to where you would be if you were walking on the street. And what that means is you have like a much brighter light on the sidewalk so that you have better visibility, because you don't need to see as far necessarily as a car moving fast, but you need to be able to see really well around you. So that's sort of the type of lighting that we're looking at for Blue Hill Ave. Oh, great question. So will all the info, including all websites, be on your website? Yes, they will. And if there is anything missing, please email us, call us, let us know, because we are trying to make sure that that is always a resource people can go to. So that has on it, as of today, all of the frequently asked questions in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. It has all of the content from today's presentation, as well as the sort of those bird's eye view plans, like those top-down plans that I was talking about for the whole corridor. And it has all of that information and those plans in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. And Fatima, I see your hand is raised. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hello.
Hey, good evening. Good presentation. Thank you. Question about in this proposal, it has the specifically the Boston Police Department, because I'm assuming they help make part of the decisions. The closing of a number of streets right now are done because in order to address issues with scooters in the evenings in particular. So American Legion gets closed off, part of Walk Hill gets closed off, Talbot Ave gets closed off, part of Harvard Street gets closed off. There are metal bars, metal gates. So if you have, you know, are those going to be addressed? You know, it becomes a whole different type of scenario, especially in the evenings. You know, there's nothing like when you don't know it's there to come upon it. So if that's possibly making sure that the Boston Police Department work with the designers to make sure that they're informing them what they're doing, because since the city, I don't actually know of any city that's addressing the scooters issues. It's an issue in every city that I seem to go to. But yeah, if that's being looked at. Thanks.
Absolutely, Fatima. Thanks for the question. So we have been working very closely with or trying to work very closely with the Boston Police Department and getting them involved not only in Blue Hill, but in other projects we have going on. We actually have not breached that specific topic of the scooter related street closures. So I'm really glad you brought that up today. That's a missing piece of our conversation and our discussion with them. So I'm going to hope that, well, we have this recorded, so I have the note there. I'm going to write it down in my notebook to make sure that we bring that into our conversations with BPD to kind of see what would make them feel comfortable stopping those road closures, because I know it can be very frustrating and unsettling to be on your way somewhere and then all of a sudden find that one of the major thoroughfares is closed. So thank you. Okay, I think I am never going to catch up on the messages, because I'm seeing there's 58 new messages. One of the things I love about this project is folks who are really involved. So to that end, if you had a question that you posted in the chat that you feel like has not been addressed, if you could either repost it in the chat so I can see it, and then if you could raise your hand, that would be really helpful. We do try to end at 8 to be respectful of folks' time. I do see at the very bottom, you know, what about fixing the streets from all the potholes? That is something that we absolutely intend to do with this project, fixing the potholes. Baseline, gotta fix the potholes. We definitely don't want those causing damage to folks' vehicles or unpleasant experiences on the vehicles. I know I've really flown out of the seat on a bus before going on over a pothole. Any other questions from folks?
I see that Fatima said that users can't save the chat. I think that's just a Zoom function, so we'll make sure that all of the questions in the chat are recorded. And if they're not already addressed in our FAQ document, we'll make sure they get in there on the next update. If you have a question that you feel like wasn't addressed in the chat and you'd like to ask it on your own time, feel free to give us a call or send us an email, and I'll put that information in the chat one more time. Or raise your hand.
Yeah, so I'll make sure I read through the whole chat. It gets saved sort of to my Zoom account. So I will make sure to look at that.
I just want to uplift that Graham put in a link to the bike counts that the city does. And I know we've been doing more and more over time, and there are 2 locations on Blue Hill Avenue, and it's an interactive map. So that's in the chat if anyone wants to click on that.
Hi, Leah. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, I got it now.
Hi
Thank you.
there. Yes, absolutely.
Did I forget my question? Oh, I know what it is. Can you put that that link back in there about the bike? Because I was looking for it and I don't see it anymore.
Yes, we can absolutely. I see Maya just posted it, so it should be in there now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
Any final questions from folks? Again, I know we covered a lot. I know a lot of it was technical. I know that I always have room for improvement in terms of making sure that I'm making it as non-technical as possible. So if there's anything that you want to discuss further, if you want to walk through specific aspects, if you have a, you know, a community event that you think we should be at, please get in touch, either by calling us at our number, that's 617-635-3944, or by emailing bluehillave@boston.gov. And I see that Kenya from our team has raised her hand. Hi, Kenya.
Hi, good evening. I'll be really, really quick, but I just wanted to just also add a quick thank you to everybody who is attending tonight's meeting. I know the 4th is around the corner, folks are getting prepped for a long weekend, and I get it, long vacations and all those things. So I just wanted to say, one, I'm a Mattapan resident. I'm a longtime Mattapan resident. I've been here my entire life and still live here. And secondly, I am one of the community engagement managers at the Boston Planning and Development Agency, also known as the BPDA with the city. My camera's off because I was having cereal for dinner. See, this is how come I love you guys so much. I mean, cereal for dinner. But I also wanted to say, what's very important to me as a community engagement manager, but just someone who lives in the community just in general. What I have always asked for residents is that when you attend these spaces, you're getting the facts, you're getting the accurate information, you're getting, you know, all the visuals and things that you should have about what's being proposed for Blue Hill Avenue. And so I ask that if folks have questions, or your neighbors have questions, or you're having conversations with family or friends, that you share the information with them so they too also have the facts. In our community, sometimes, you know, there's a lot of hearsay and things that are not quite accurate or factual. And so it's very important, even if, and honestly, I don't care whether you approve it, you like it, don't like it, and hate it. As long as you are basing your opinion on the facts that have been presented to you here tonight, I'm all good. I just want to make sure that we're sharing facts and accurate information throughout our community. And that is very, very important. So all the links to things that you guys have, please share them with your family and friends, colleagues, neighbors. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenya. Yes, we hope your cereal is tasty. Okay, with that, barring any other questions from folks, I think we can go ahead and end tonight's meeting. Thank you again for showing up this close to the 4th, for sticking with us. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. I really appreciate your continued engagement. Please reach out if you have questions, if you want to chat. That is exactly what we're here for. So thanks everybody for joining us again on this Tuesday night. Next July will be our sort of last virtual public meeting, but I absolutely promise it will not be the last time you hear from us. We'll just be sort of evaluating how we're doing engagement, making sure we're reaching the folks we need to, and we'll make sure that we come back with an update to our listserv, which you all should be on. If you're not, I will add your emails, so no need to worry there, to make sure you all have the most up-to-date information and that you can get in touch with us at any time. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the great questions, as always.